Hi, my name is Tyler Duffy, and I'm the host of the Building the Bridges to a Better Future podcast. I was born and raised in Lacombe, Alberta, spending my formative years growing up on a buffalo ranch. After high school, I became a power engineer and spent 11 years working in the energy industry. I left that career behind and moved on to study a psychology degree at Red Deer Polytechnic. While completing that degree, I read one thing that stuck in my head that began to change my thinking, shape my beliefs, and ultimately guide my decisions from that point forward. The Canadian Mental Health Association had published some research that said that 80% of lifelong mental health issues have their root in early childhood trauma. Let me say that again. 80% of lifelong mental health issues have their root in early childhood trauma. Now that got me thinking. Does that mean that 80% of lifelong mental health issues are preventable? So research has shown that early childhood trauma is one of the major causes to lifelong mental health issues. So I feel, as a society, we should recognize that and implement programs to reduce, buffer, and eliminate early childhood trauma. Otherwise, we will never be taking a preventative approach to mental health issues. We will be locked in a perpetual process of reacting to mental health issues when they surface later on in life. Like the old saying goes, rather than mop up the bleeding, you gotta stop the bleeding. Now, this was new information to me, but professionals in psychology, education, and the social work world are well aware of this. And community leaders in Red Deer had started to create programs to address this issue by increasing the amount, variety, frequency, and quality of social support the kids get at critical stages in their social and emotional development. The hypothesis is that if we implement positive social support programs for youth and maintain them over years so that they become a permanent part of the Canadian culture, then it may be possible to turn the tide and begin a downward trend in the number of people that struggle with mental health issues in future generations. In this podcast, we will be interviewing the key people that created these programs and have worked tirelessly for 20 years to maintain them. The goal is to share what we've done in Red Deer, why we have done it, and how you can do the same in your community if you're passionate about taking a preventative approach to mental health as well. Come and check it out as we begin to build the bridges to create a better future. Okay, welcome back to season 2 of the Building the Bridges to a Better Future podcast. Season 1 covered all the story of everybody in Red Deer who worked together to create that positive youth development program, which is now called Grow Kids. So season 1 talked all about and interviewed everybody who was on the 2 different teams that created the program. And we got Sean back here today, and the goal today is to basically create the manual, create the framework, so that we can share that with other communities so they can do the same thing. So Sean and I are going to kind of brainstorm about what the framework is. We're going to make some notes, and then we'll have a manual that we can share at the end. So gotcha. Okay, well let's go with this approach here. So here's basically what happens on the day now that it's operating smoothly. We take all the grade 5 kids in Red Deer. All the girls go to one of our sports facilities that has lots of space in it, you know, it's hockey rink, pools,
the recreation center.
Yeah, so we essentially use our recreation centers, the Collicut Center and the Daw Center. So all the girls go to one, the boys go to the other one. It doesn't have to be gender specific, but that's the way it panned out. And anyways, so it's just like any other school day. The kids go to school, buses pick them up, bus them to those 2 locations. We do a little bit of an opening ceremonies, and then we take the kids and we split them into clans of about 30.
25.
25. split them into clans of about 25. We put a minimum of 5 mentors, high school mentors, with each clan, so that there's
minimum
enough. Minimum of 2.
But their teachers are also there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
the teachers, and the kids are separated according to what they wanted to do, not what school they go to. So we like a few kids from each school to be together, but part of the context of the West relationships, and they're on their way to middle school, we want them to kind of be, what's a good term? Want to be challenging them a little bit. Yeah, to get out of their comfort zone. And sort of be confronted with this reality that you're going to be around new people in a few months here when the next school year starts up in middle school. So we're trying to mimic that context. Yeah. So there might be 3 or 4 kids from each school in a group, and all the other kids will be from different schools. So the teachers, may or may not even be with a group that has students from their school, unless they specifically request that they need to be for medical or behavioral reasons. So that's part of the hallmark of it. Yeah, I think that's a key thing worth noting on, is that we don't take all the kids that know each other and keep them in their little groups that they already know. You mix them up. Yeah. And the idea is it forces them to get out of their comfort zone, make new friends. Right. And they're identified by color. Yeah. So everybody gets a t-shirt. Yeah, every clan has their own matching shirt color kind of thing to keep them separate. And then so there's how many high schools teachers? For each clan you want 5 leaders-ish. Yeah. So there's 25 kids, 2 or 3 teachers, and at minimum 2, sometimes 3 or 4 high school mentors as well. Yeah. And so, how many elementary schools is there in Red Deer? There's 17 public schools and a few less separate schools. So there's in and around like 30 something. Yeah. Closer to 30 than 40. All of those kids get mixed up, so they're meeting new friends that they never have before. Yeah. So yeah, they're split into clans that are all color coded, which is strictly for organizational purposes. I think that everybody gets a shirt as well, which I think is kind of a good thing. It's kind of like a souvenir or rite of passage. Well, it's threefold. It's organizational, structurally, because we can quickly identify if somebody gets led astray. Yeah. Okay, what color are you? What number are you? Because we used to do. Every group was in a distinct different color, but it's just kind of outgrown the color possibilities. So now we do 7 or 8 colors. So there'll be 4 sections of red, 4 sections of blue. So you're a red 1, a red 2, a red 3, a red 4. So if somebody's lost, we can easily look on the sheet. And it's also designed to create a sense of I belong to something. Yes. And then, of course, our medicine wheel branding logo is on the front, and all the sponsors on the back. So there's a bit of a sharing of our principles on the front. And lots of people ask, what does this mean? And then, of course, you need to recognize the supporters. It's so funny because it's not funny. It's just really cool. Over the years, we're close to 20,000 shirts are out there. Yeah, I remember. And I saw one on Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles. No way. Yeah. Really? I wanted to ask the kid, but I thought that was kind of creepy. But I was sure he was with his parents, I could have said. And I have no idea if it was a kid from Red Deer, or maybe these shirts end up in Valley Village in different places. And I know I've given out hundreds of extras that wrong size or whatever over the years. 2 boxes I see kids wearing them around the community. Oh, 100%. And it's kind of fun because I think it is something that they nice do. Shirt. I actually made that shirt. And then we chat about what it means and whether they had a good experience. And for I think we pay about $7 a pop. So it's our biggest expense, but we also don't do any advertising because we don't have to. Yeah. It's all on the shirt. Yeah. Exactly. So kids are not just wearing their shirt, they're literally selling the experience they had. Yeah. And of course everybody's different. So there's just this really massive kind of complex quantum story every year.
Yeah.
Kids that wore those shirts, they all have something to say about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So once all those grade 5 kids show up, they're pre-organized into different clans, and then they meet their clan leaders. And then what happens is each clan will go throughout the day and do 4 different sessions, which ties into that, the hope wheel, right? And so each session has a different theme of, refresh my memory, north is...
Well, east is where it starts,
Yeah.
The domain of respect.
Respect.
And that's, in context, that's dependence, right? It's the domain of the infant. So, everything's new. So a little baby is born and they start to cry because they're hungry, and somebody comes with a fresh diaper and like, well, that's not what I need. So I got to figure, how do I'm hungry. So they cry a little differently, and somebody brings about, oh, so that's what I got to do. So the idea is that you can't grow and start to learn until you respect the environment that you need to thrive in. So they need to figure that out. So anything to do with newness, new activities, new experiences, new, expectations, responsibilities to be social and talk to people and come outside your comfort zone. That's all in the East. Then in the South is understanding. So we're getting from dependence to independence. So, which is good because the preteens, they might not be able to drive a car and pay their bills and have a mortgage, but they can tie their shoes and make their eggs in the morning. So it's the learning phase domain of the child. The domain of interdependence is in the West, relationships. So, like you and I both know a lot of adults who haven't figured out how it's much easier to be part of a team than it is to go it alone. People are prideful, they don't want to ask for help, they don't know how to give help. So that's interdependency. And then the domain of the North, eagles fly and smoke rises, the spirit world is the domain of the elder. It's maintenance, responsibility. So, you don't have to be old to be acting like an elder. Those high school kids from the first part of the day are acting as an elder. They're sharing their experience, their ability to, manage and supervise and be friendly and inviting and trying to create a vibe with their group, especially for those kids who are stuck in respect. They're just not comfortable being there, So they do. You've seen it. I mean, it's remarkable the kind of work these high school kids do.
Yeah.
And we don't provide them with any training. This is all their own intuitive things that they do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I shouldn't say we don't provide them with any training. Like, we definitely explain.
We give them a little bit of an orientation.
Yeah, we tell them what they're supposed to do and what we would hope they would kind of step up to do.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating how well they handle that.
Yeah, for sure. So you got to come up. We picked those 4 themes, and then you come up with a bunch of number of sessions, each one that kind of resonates in those different themes, so the kids get a variety of stuff, and they're not just coming and doing like sports. You know what I mean? To try and dig a little bit deeper than that. Sports activities are involved, but that's one of the each different ones.
And I think the thing to say is, like, they don't come there to learn how to play a sport.
No.
They come to learn, like I'm a lacrosse player. Strong mind, strong body, strong spirit.
Yeah.
So they're throwing the ball around. They're learning about the ergonomics of throwing and catching and picking up a ball, but they're also learning how respect is taught through lacrosse.
Yes.
They're understanding how to do certain things. Lacrosse is a team game, interdependency. And of course, it's also in Indigenous culture, it's the ancestors' game. So it's a very spiritually aligned game. So that's one of those great ones that hits on all 4 directions. Yeah.
So you've got to, I guess you got to take the number of kids you got. Let's use an even number. So let's say there's 800 in
Throw
Red Deer.
more usually, yeah.
But that's the ballpark, right?
Yeah.
So 800 divided by 25 is the number of sessions you have to have, right?
Well, some are repeating. Well, most of them are repeating. Yeah. So we usually end up with about 35 sessions.
Yeah.
So, like, several groups will hit up the same session. So we don't.
Yes. But you need,
like 800 divided by like 4 groups per 100, so that's 32 groups. So that's roughly the number of sessions we need to have. But each group only hits up 4 of them.
Yes. Yeah. So you need to have enough different sessions so that each group is doing something different every 20, because the sessions are what, a half hour or something like that?
About 45
minutes. So all the kids come, they get divided into their clans, and then they, short little opening ceremonies, because we just want to kind of get to it, and then boom, we've got all these sessions set up all over the place. It would be in the range of 30 different sessions happening simultaneously, and they'll go do one session for 45 minutes, and then they're led off by their clan leaders to go do another session, and then we have lunch break, and then there's 2 sessions after lunch.
Yeah.
So simultaneously, there's 32-ish sessions going on in a city the size of Red Deer, right? In various different
Well, if you
classrooms.
include both events, it'd be double that.
Yeah, it'd be,
Indoor and outdoor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, so that's basically the framework of the day. Let's go. So you need the facility, whatever your number of high school kids.
It's about 100 and a bit, because we also have like.
I meant grade 5 kids. Number of grade 5 kids divided by 25 gives you the number of sessions that you need. Number of sessions.
And of course, it's not the same every year. Like,
no,
we've had over 900 kids in particular years.
Yeah.
And then some of the stuff, like archery, obviously, when we've offered it, they need more people to help facilitate it. So we'll send 4 or 5 high. So the number of high school kids is a bit more variable depending on the kind of sessions you're offering, because some need extra eyes and ears for safety. So if you did, if you did 32 groups, that'd be like 64 group leaders. Yeah. But then, we easily put to work another 36 to round out to 100.
So kind of like the number of grade 5 kids is kind of what you build from, because that tells you how many clan leaders you need. It tells you how many sessions you need.
There's a bit of a calculation that you need to do each year.
But then you want to put, say, 2 to 4 high school kids and a couple of adults per clan as well.
Right. And the adults we know are given, because they can't go somewhere without, teachers, staff members from their school. It's not always teachers, because, if you have a school with, a school with 4 or 5 grade 5 classes, they can't really afford to send all 5 of those teachers. So they might say, like, we ask for 2 supervisors from each school. Sometimes that's 2 educational assistants. Sometimes parents volunteer to come. So but we want each group to have a couple of adults and 2 or 3 high school kids. Yeah. And like the pool takes probably 8 or 12, because we don't want them to have to be there all day. Yeah. But high school kids will go in and assist the lifeguards, and some of them are lifeguards. 6 in the morning, 5 or 6 in the morning, 5 or 6 after lunch. So there's lots of room for high school kids to gain some volunteer hours. For sure. And then I do a Google form, and I write up a really glowing, brilliant reference letter, and they just fill in their first and last name, and on a Google form, and Autocrat prints out a beautiful reference with our branding on it, straight to their inbox. Perfect. So it's just an efficient way to make sure everybody gets their comp credit for volunteering. Yeah.
That kind of covers what it's needed for logistically, right? You need a facility. Obviously, your sporting facilities, community halls, curling rinks, whatever. Every community is gonna have to do that. Transportation from schools to the event, your clan leaders and your teachers to lead the clans, and then your session providers,
And whatever equipment they need each session. Has
Yeah, and
different stuff.
they generally, like, sometimes there's a little bit of cost. Like, for example, the nutritionists, I don't know why their ministry doesn't do it, but they always ask, $150 or whatever for stuff to make smoothies or something. So you need to know up front when you solicit those session facilitators, like, will you have any cost involved, and what do you estimate that to be?
Yeah.
So we can account for that. Occasionally, we'll pay a sub cost if a school can't afford to release a teacher to come and facilitate a session.
Mm-hmm.
But most schools don't. But I understand if they have to,
Yeah.
And then once or twice, people have come from Edmonton or Calgary, and we just give them mileage, whatever, 32 cents a kilometer, and just because we know it's burdening them, so we try to be as reasonable as possible with that, given our budget constraints. And honestly, most of the time people say, no, it's fine, I don't need it, but I believe in what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm offering this as a gratuity.
Yep. So yeah, that kind of covers the framework and stuff. So you got to build your support in your community so that people know and are aware of it and are willing to contribute, which most people, once they hear what's going on, where it's like, we're trying to do this to improve kids, and then everybody gets behind that. And then we kind of went through the framework of, your number of grade 5 kids you build from that, and then you need your facility and your session provider. Should we rattle off some of the sessions that we've had over the years?
Oh yeah, geez.
Obviously we're not gonna, because for us it's 32 some each year, but
yeah. And I'll just say some of the really popular, consistent ones, like the Human Book or Living Library is facilitated by Tatiana, who is part of the core team.
She's coming up in an episode. You're going to get to meet Tatiana.
There you go, yeah. And so she handles that at the Daw Library branch, which just so happens to be at the facility.
Yeah.
And that's a very popular. It's a quick story about my son Wyatt. So when he came when he was in grade 5, and then when he was in grade 10 or 11, well, he had been volunteering already as a group leader, and then he came back and was a living book in the living library. And by that time, he had been diagnosed T1D, and he had been to the pro camp Team Nova Nordis the previous summer in Athens, Georgia. So he brought his bike.
That's diabetic, right?
Type 1 diabetes.
Type 1 diabetic, yeah.
So he trained with the professional cycling team that's all diabetic. It's sponsored by Nova Nordis Pharmaceuticals. So he came back from camp. So it would have been a week before or a month before he was going back to camp for his 3rd year. So he's kind of fresh off the previous year, getting ready to go, training all winter. And so he was there with his bike and just talking about, the idea of bike racing, but also as a diabetic person. And so, and what that means. So I popped in just to see how he was doing, and I could tell there's a couple boys at his table. So I didn't go over there. I just let him do his thing. And there's what I thought to be 2 staff members standing behind these 2 boys. So I'm like, well, I must be working with some staff for whatever reason. So I caught up with him at lunch. I said, hey, that was really cool. I popped in, there's a couple boys. He says, yeah, Dad, like, you won't believe this. This is the coolest thing ever. Because I said, well, why were they with those staff members? He says, those weren't staff members. Those were their moms. I said, well, why were they there? And he says, both of them had been recently diagnosed T1D and within the week of the event.
Oh, wow.
And they came to talk to him because of his experience. And it was just so validating for him to do that. So why I mention this is because the stories that I hear from the high school kids who come back and do that kind of thing, whether it be as a facilitator or even a clan leader, we unanticipated positive outcome of doing this was how it's impacted the older kids and their role as facilitators and mentors. We didn't design it to be that way. It just happened that way.
Yeah.
And the amount of kids that come in high school and cite their experience from grade 5 as the reason why they're coming to volunteer is almost 100%. I would say.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
That is,
You know, I mean, people talk to you about, well, kids these days, you know, like, yeah, whatever, dude. Like, let me talk to you about the kids I know. You know?
Right? Yeah. Come and observe this day and see if you have the same
For
opinion
real,
about
for
kids.
real. Like,
right.
you know, you want to cure the pejorative kind of tone. Well, teenagers, when I say, look, I want you to
come and watch.
join.
Yeah, come and see.
Like, yeah, and then we'll talk, you know, after that. So.
Oh yeah, so some of the other session providers, like they have a
skateboarding. Sorry, I got off there.
That's all good.
Skateboarding is a very popular annual. We do like the outdoor stuff. Like Glenn Trefanenko comes every year and does drum circle.
Yeah, they do drama games.
Yeah, we had emergency services comes. All of the physical, like the swimming is very popular.
Yeah.
The martial arts stuff, the archery is very popular.
I like that one. Denise Fredine's husband came and they did a little bit of carpentry.
Yeah, a little bit of carpentry.
So they would bring in just like, I think it was like just a bandsaw.
They were, yeah.
And then they would show them how to use it, and they'd cut out a little hockey stick, and they would make, in 40 minutes they would make a mini stick. And, and then they're all carrying around the mini sticks for the rest of the day.
The hip hop dance one's popular.
Dance one's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot.
Yeah, basically when it comes down to it, you got to brainstorm in your community, and it's anything that promotes respect, hope, understanding, responsibility, team building, and, you know, trust exercises, doing trust falls and stuff like that. Anything that gets them working together, cooperating stuff. Because there's no cookie cutter.
No,
these are the sessions
no,
you
there
do.
isn't, and there's no limitations either. Like
no,
like no matter what you propose, it's not hard to fit that into one of those 4 directions.
Yeah,
because they're very universal.
Yeah, you just got the hope or the dream boards.
Yeah, vision boards.
Vision boards.
We've had animators, we've had writers come in, comic strip authors. I forgot to mention on that wheel too, like the center core of that medicine wheel is hope, health, opportunity, privilege, and education. So that's more of a ethereal overarching thing. So that's what we're trying to instill a sense of, and we do it through the 4 directions, right? So health in all the different contexts, opportunities we are creating just by virtue of offering the day and exposing kids to new things. Privileges is people, what's the difference between opportunity and privilege? It's really, you know, there's a narrow difference, but privileges aren't necessarily things that can be engineered for you, but it's a way, okay, well, I didn't know I was good at that. So it's, you know, we have different privileges, different people, but we believe it's important that kids understand that they can look at themselves through a privilege lens. Because, you know, you might not, let's say you're in a wheelchair, you might not have the privilege of walking, but you have lots of other privileges. And the important thing is to try and identify those. So what do I have to work with? Not what's hindering me from doing something. It's a fine distinction, but it's an important distinction. Because everybody has privilege. We just need to identify what that is. And then, of course, education, lifelong learning.
Yeah, so that's the message with that is you got to brainstorm in your community and figure it out and do just anything that you think is going to have a positive effect on kids.
Which is not that hard to come up with.
No. Yeah. You got to give them the opportunities to do something and overcome a challenge. That's one thing that I remember, that the thing that builds self-esteem and the most is prevent kids with an opportunity for a challenge and then give them they overcome it on their own.
Well,
that's very empowering feeling.
Self-esteem's it's like irony in terms of like, define irony. You ask people to do that and they're, oh, wait a minute.
It's kind of complex.
Well, they know what it is. They can identify when they see it.
Yeah.
But
to define it,
creating a definition around it in English language is not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah.
When the actual and the literal meaning mean exactly the opposite. You have irony.
Yeah.
But most people wouldn't be able to rattle that off the top of their head, but they know when they see irony. So to me, self-esteem is another one of those words. We know what it means, by vibe, but trying to define, or even more difficult, trying to define how you get it, achieve it. And so I came up with a theory about that. Like, you play the guitar, you know, but if you're a really good guitar player, but if you only played the guitar living as a hermit on the top of a giant mountain, would you feel self-esteem from your guitar playing? I would argue no, because the first necessary element of self-esteem is you need to believe that you're good at something, or at least have capacity to be good. But if the second more important step isn't present, you need an opportunity to share that with other people. Otherwise, there's no affirmation.
To get that positive reflected appraisal from them.
Now, I can't give you your self-esteem, but I can be a necessary element to facilitate how you feel about yourself by acknowledging, oh man, you're really good at playing the guitar. You know, and just revering that, which hopefully would be a natural outcome of actually being good at it, or somebody understand that you need to feel like you're good at it. And in schools, we see it all the time. Teachers should not doctor kids' artwork. And they might not have a clue what that kid just drew in kindergarten. But oh my God, this is the best art I've ever seen. Can you help me understand what you drew here? Because it doesn't look like anything. But the kid can't know that you don't know what it is. So, you know, he needs to understand that they just did the best drawing that they ever could do. And by asking them to explain it to you, they're sharing it with you. That's how the esteem elevates. So we believe that by providing these opportunities for kids to be noticed in participation and acknowledged for their effort, that the natural outcome is an increase or focus on their esteem.
Oh, let's start with the basics here, Sean. So let's go with, I think building your team is probably footprint or step number one, right? So with who would you say were critical members on the team to make the day happen, and what were their roles and responsibilities?
But actually, there was several steps before that, actually.
Okay. Sure. So where do you think we should start here then?
Well, I don't know if you've heard of the social collaboration model, Oscar Berg. So there's a lot of stuff below the waves. So, you know, in business and maybe in education too, the whole form, storm, norm, reform continuum. There's a lot of stuff that happens before you form, right?
All right.
The first thing was we needed to understand what kind of support there was, because without, you know, participation, whatever we ended up coming up with, if people didn't buy into the concept at the outset, then it wasn't going to be a waste of time. So the first thing I did after hearing about the event that was called Go Girl at the time was I invited several community representatives from many different agencies. So there's probably about 35 of us that I invited. Not everybody was able to make it, but we ended up probably with 25. And I just bought everybody breakfast at Red Deer Lodge and said, okay, so this is our idea, this is my idea. And I just want to know what you have to think about it, and whether you'd support it, however it ends up looking. And that was a unanimous, great conversation. We learned a few things about what people felt might be barriers and the kinds of things that they wanted to get out of it. So that was kind of the green light to do the next thing, which you were involved with, and that was the World Cafe at the college at the time.
Yeah.
Because you know, we can go on our gut and believe that it was a good thing to do, but it's also nice to have some quantitative, you know, rationale for that. So I would say we probably had a few more people come out to that than the initial meeting. I can't remember exactly how many, but
that Knowledge Cafe was quite a few. I think I went to that breakfast as well.
You probably did, yeah. I don't remember everybody that was there. I know Greg was there.
Yeah, I think Greg drug me along as a tag along.
Yeah, could be. Well, and we met at Tim Hortons a couple times too after that. And then probably, well, that was in the fall of whatever year that was. And then in the spring and May, we had the Knowledge World Cafe. And there's probably 36 representative organizations there. And that ended up in the paper, and that, you know, so we created a case, you know, evidence that there was a need for this. And then it was a bit of a job still selling it to the school boards. Like, both school boards are on board in principle, but it had to be actionable. We need to present it in a way that was actionable. So that's when we got the committee together. And then our first priority was we need to pay for it. And we got real lucky that year. It ended up actually as a best practice. It was the ministry, it was social services. They were doing a study on family violence and various other things. So they ended up giving us $10,000, which would have been enough to do the whole thing. Well, we also connected with Kinsman and a few other smaller supporters. Yeah. So we had a lot of money that first year. So we went ahead with it, and it was successful. We had the whole thing's on film. Dana did it. He was working locally, had his own online TV station back then. Dana Rondo.
Yeah.
Not Dana.
Renee.
Renee Rondo. Yeah. Dana's his wife. Yeah. Renee came out and did that.
Yeah.
And that's how we got started.
So I guess the step one would be begin approaching community agencies that could support it.
Yeah, I think that you have to make a case for the need, which isn't hard to do. Yeah. But unless you take that explicit step, you're kind of rolling the dice a little bit. You know, it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to have a party, but I'm worried nobody's going to show up, you know? So we got the buy-in before we even went ahead and started, formally or concrete planning. Yeah. And then of course, like, there are a lot of logistical things. Like, one of the barriers was, well, how are we going to get everybody to 2 different places on the same day? Can we even handle that transportation load? So I capitulated to the other event. I said, look, we'll pay for all the buses because we had all that money the first year. And we'll voluntarily arrive after you and pick up before you. So we're not impacting your schedule. Yeah. And it's still, to this day, is like that. There's just a lot of negotiating and a lot of conversations about, okay, so, like Apollo 8's in orbit, we got a paperclip, 2 gum wrappers, and a tube of glue. How are we going to save these guys? Like a lot of creative thinking, and problem solving.
So if we, like, obviously the school systems, you got to get their buy-in. Because it's been going for 15 years now, who are some of the key supporters, the key agencies that are there? Like, I know the Kinsman is
Kinsman has been our most consistent and enthusiastic supporter, for sure.
Is there any, like, is like town or city council support needed at all, or
not directly, but in principle? Like, we've always had good representation by elected officials at the local level, not so much the provincial level, but and of course school boards. Our board has been exceptional. Like, you probably saw again, like, I don't think there were a lot of them missing between senior admin and the school board. Yeah. And it's always nice to have them come out and just see what, the good things that are happening. And they're very supportive of that. And we get foundation money from both school districts as well. Foundation for Red Republic, and I can't remember what the separate system calls there, but similar operating though. To be honest though, like, the volunteers is really the catalyst for making it happen, because we don't pay anybody to come in and facilitate the day. So the high school kids are there as well, and to be honest, they've evolved into planners even, because when we ran the Thriving Kids Conference for the last 2 years, the different agendas about leadership, grade 4 to grade 12, the high school kids planned and ran the whole thing. We just guide them and buy them pizza, you know, and give them a reference letter. But this one, we started with high school kids as mentors. Now those high school kids have evolved into facilitators. So some of the sessions we saw at TKC have become sessions at Crow Kids, but they're also still supporting as mentors and, you know, leaders of the groups of fifth graders for the day. And then of course, all the different community members that come and, you know, sit in the living library or offer a session on martial arts or whatever. AHS is also very supportive with their people on nutrition and, you know, storyboards. And so it's really a very large scale collaboration, to be honest.
It is, yeah.
A ton of moving parts.
Yeah.
But the spirit is what makes it all gel, because nobody's there to sell anything or to pitch anything or to make any money.
Yeah.
They just believe in the community level of support.
Providing opportunities for the kids.
Yeah.
So if we go from a logistic perspective, we're gonna have to come at this from a few different angles now that I'm thinking it through. So you need the support of your community leaders, you know, or whatever, the school systems.
Well, I would say logical connections, right? Like social service agencies, school systems, parks and rec. So people that deal with families and kids, you know, every day.
Yeah, so people would have to basically look at what exists in their community and utilize what's there.
Well, and to be honest, there's a reverse kind of order, unanticipated positive consequence of planning something like this. You can't do it without scanning those services and what might be missing, right?
Yeah.
So you could framework this as a research project just as easily as you could just an event, right?
Yeah.
Because okay, so what do we have and what might we need to add, and can we use this event as a catalyst for promoting that? The first few years we actually had sort of the trade fair version of the whole thing, not version but aspect. So agencies would come, put up their stuff at a little table, and it was great. But a lot of those agencies don't exist anymore. The funding has just dried up and it's not a thing. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
So if you start out with, you know, you're gonna have to approach it a year in advance, right?
Well, for us it was 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you probably could.
So yeah, if you start, you know, if you wanted to do it in 2026, too late. You should start plan for 2027.
Yeah, if you're starting from
point.
scratch, maybe fall 2027. We don't meet until December, January for the May event.
Yeah.
But that's after rinse and repeat many times, you know.
Yeah, so it's the kinks have been worked out and the people involved know what their tasks are.
It's a well-oiled machine.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's the first key
message. And the
is
networking, you know, to divide and distribute the effort. It takes a while to build those relationships so that you can call somebody up and say, hey, we're kind of hooped here. Oh, I'll be right there. We've literally called people on the day of, hey, I know you didn't book it, but somebody didn't show up, and I'll be there in half an hour. Yeah. It takes a while to develop those relationships.
For sure. Okay, so the first one is build a kind of the connections in your community agencies. That's going to be your school system, any kind of community clubs, like the Kinsman is a good one, but you could reach out to whatever clubs might have, whatever community focused clubs you have in your community. I don't know, what are some other clubs it could be?
Well, we've done Rotary, the Service Credit Union has been around for a while. Optimists have been there here and there. So the service clubs, that's what they do, right? But, I guess to me too, though, if you believe in why you're doing this at all in the first place, you come at this from a fundamental perspective, and you're really driving the agenda that we don't have enough support for youth, then you're not just pitching people to help, you're pitching that idea. So like, okay, business X, like, have you ever thought about this? Because this impacts your business, whether you believe it or not, or this impacts your community facility.
For
and
sure.
of course we host it at a community facility, so that's another big partnership. Like the city of Red Deer, basically their support is massive because they supply the facility in kind, and their service people are all there working anyways, but they assign them to this event virtually for the entire day. So the only fee we have from the city is to pay the extra lifeguards.
Which is
that
minimal.
But when you just think about that for a second.
To rent the GH DAW for the day
like
would be...
that was a pitch, right? And that's like thousands and thousands of dollars in both locations that we're not paying because the city fundamentally believes in the message and the purpose and the rationale for doing it at all. So there's a lot of like, you have to really believe in what you're doing so you can come at it from that, look, this is how it benefits us, and this is why, this is why it needs to happen, and this is how you can help make it happen, and to be able to display to agencies and businesses and individuals how it's communally beneficial.
Yeah, and that's basically it's community beneficial because it promotes positive youth development.
Right.
And, and therefore, ideally, less long-term mental health issues later in life, right?
Which dovetails into all kinds of other stuff. Like deviancy.
Exactly. Building the bridges to a better future. That title is not an accident.
Absolutely. Like it's like, like in other cultures, as most people understand, or maybe they don't, I don't know, but like, and our particular event is framed from an Indigenous perspective. So these kids coming there and participating, especially the high school kids, it's easy to frame them as elders in their role during the conference, during the event. So it's this idea that everybody can take on a leadership role, but there's like, I'm not getting any younger and you're not getting any younger. So if we weren't doing it, why wouldn't we be doing it? It's kind of like you get to a point where you understand things well enough. I feel like if you don't do something like this, you're kind of shirking your responsibility as a member of society to be an elder and to give back and to, try and create a better system, a better reality than the one that we grew up in. I mean, you're younger than me, but you get my point.
Yeah. It's
just, to me, like, there's not enough of that in the world, in my opinion. It's just, why are you doing this? Because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. That's my...
They say it takes a community to raise a child. I actually like the flip of that better. It takes a child to raise, as in call to action, a community.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, it takes a child to bring a community together because they need it, right? And they need that attention.
And it to me, it's not something that should need to be explained, but I feel like it does need to be explained.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so step one, start meeting with your community leaders and be like, hey, this is what we want to do, and then get teams of buy-in from the school systems and get a large support base of people to help.
Yeah. Well, and I guess there's a point of diminishing returns on the large, because you need enough, but you don't want too much either, or too many, right?
Yeah.
Because there have been some years where, I hate to acknowledge this, but it needs to be acknowledged. There have been some years where they love the idea of being involved with it, but I would say their intentions for being involved were not 100% authentic. They wanted to get recognition, or they wanted to highlight this for the agency that they answer to. So they end up becoming tertiarily involved, not fundamentally involved, because they're trying to get the good PR out of it. So, and I hate to acknowledge that that's a reality, but it has been at times.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a good thing to note. So yeah, that's first step is get agencies and support involved. Now, do you want to go through next what feels more logical and rational to you, like your creative team, or do you want to go through the logistics of what resources are needed, like the facilities, the busing, that sort of stuff? So which speaks to you?
Well, the team
first?
piece.
I kind of feel like the team.
Yeah, it's a little bit.
Because now that, I guess my question is, now that it's a finely tuned machine, how many people are on the
Yeah, and I would have to say that's a variable answer, because it depends on who those people are.
Yeah.
And what they bring to the table. Like our committee for our event is very small. Like it's very streamlined. Mm-hmm. And, and I would say that we're able to do it that way because of the way that those people are connected and the 10,000 hours plus that they're bringing to the table from the outset.
And the familiarity with the program now. Because I remember year one going in, I was like, man, there's a lot of moving parts here. I hope we don't lose any kids. Right? Well, but then by year 5, it was kind of like, okay, it was kind of like we all kind of knew what was going on. Yeah. And you do your setup work, but then the dominoes start falling and you know how they're going to fall.
Yeah. And there's a lot of trust required. You put people in positions of, authority, and you trust that they know what they're doing, and you let it ride, Mm-hmm. So, and one of the principles of the logistic is you need to understand how to divide and conquer. So you create a lot of micro units of management working within the larger system. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a fractal reality. Like there's the main core committee planning the whole thing. Then you've got little subcommittees in each school and the teams that are formed with those. Yeah. And then you've got the high school mentors, and you've got, natural leaders amongst the group and the grade 5 kids that sort of step up. And then just, people that are thinking on their feet and adjusting, knowing that the day, if you're uncomfortable with, let's just say if you're super type A, you probably won't want to be there that day. And just surrounding yourself with good people who know how to do what they do really well, and just let them do it,
It's starting to take more sense for me. If we start with the facilities and then work our way up until we get to the organizational team. I think that might be the best way to approach this.
Yeah, well, and the facility wise, they are part of the organizational team.
Yeah.
Like Matt has been really great in recent years at GH Daw. And he comes to the meetings, and we just trust that we just throw him the numbers and they figure out the flow of the day logistics wise. We handle the organization of the groups and who gets assigned to them. They tell us what they prefer in terms of sessions, and we do our best to make sure everybody has at least one or two that they like. There's a whole other kind of spoke that goes off into organizing and soliciting the people to run the sessions. So, and being very communicative and transparent about, we can't even up to the day guarantee that exactly what you asked for you're going to get, but we can guarantee, you control things you can control. When we solicit those sessions, we know that every single, facilitator has been given instruction. Your session has to connect to respect, understanding, relationships, responsibility. At least one. More is better. Could be all 4. Yeah. But we don't really want to have you there if you can't draw that connection. Yeah. Because that's what the day is all about, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of learning and experiencing. Yeah. So that's even a bit of a trust thing, but I think that communicating that really explicitly is super important. Used to be we put our own transportation schedule together. That was a nightmare. So I'm like, one day it just dawned on me, like, these people do this for a living at Prairie Bus Lines, and they're giving us a good deal. That's another supporter in kind. Why are we doing this? So I just called them and said, okay, if I sent you the numbers from each school, you figure it out. Going to each event, how long would it take you to figure that out? Oh, like a couple hours. Done. Yeah.
hand it off to the pros.
Yeah. So it's like,
Yeah.
like again, this bears repeating. You can't be a micromanager. You need to to understand the big picture and just line up things and let them go, So I probably make 150 phone calls or emails personally between December and right up to the day. Like last year, we had food, but we didn't have anything to serve it in. So I ripped across the store to the wholesale and bought a bunch of cafeteria style trays and just, I'll be right back. So it's like a lot of think on your feet stuff.
Okay, so is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you think we have to? I feel like we've kind of laid the hazy blueprint out that I'll take and organize this into a more document. But I feel like the blueprint is community support agencies, and then the facility that you're going to do it in, transportation back and forth, all of your session providers, your high school volunteers as the clan leaders, and the teachers to help them out. One thing we'll touch on that is always go for a ratio of at least, never have more than 5 mentees per mentor is kind of the ratio, because then that person's attention is too diffused and kids can feel like they're not getting
it seems I don't know the science about why it works, but it just seems to work really well with about a 1 to 5 ratio per group.
That was from that literature review I did. That was something that came out of that. It was in mentorship research, they find that 3 to 5 is the ideal ratio. If you go above 5, it doesn't matter. Then just the effectiveness just drops off. And I think it's just because their attention is too diffused. So it's a 5 to 1 ratio. If you've got 25 clan mentees, you need a minimum of 5 clan leaders per. I got lost now. That kind of got me off track, but so that was that gets your clans built. And we talked about the session, so that is kind of the blueprint. Maybe a brief touch on money, like our shirts is the biggest expense, right?
Yeah, shirts. So we charge, basically what we do for years. We charge $6 per participant in each school, which.
That's paid by the family kind of thing?
We didn't dictate to schools how they would collect that money, but in our situation at our event, every single case, the schools find budget to do it. And so, but when you think about it, this is a full day of enriching activities
for $6
with a real depth of experience and the philosophy and the research to back up why you're doing it. So if you had 50 grade 5s, that's $300. You can't even rent a bus in town to do a round trip field study for $300. So, and we pay for the bus as well. So it's the best deal for a school going on a field trip. It's even in many cases tied to curriculum, So especially the phys ed and wellness curriculum. But so that we increased that to 7 last year. But just because social agency money is kind of drying up a little bit over time. There's a slow receding of available funds, donations. So Kinsman has been super solid. Other agencies already mentioned. But what we're going to do this year is take the total cost of last year's event divided by the number of participants, and that's going to be our charge to the schools. So because we're a little worried over time, if things don't change in the way that the world is viewing the importance of all this, that we won't be able to afford it if we're depending on donations. So in order to maintain the effort and continue to offer it, it needs to be a cost recovery situation. So, and I worked it out last year, that would have been between $12 and $13 per kid instead of 7. It's still a bargain at twice the price. Now, we're still going to obviously solicit funds from agencies.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we ran into last year, like AGLC rules changed too. So we used to use that money for t-shirts. We can't do that anymore. It doesn't fall in their guidelines.
Oh.
So you got to be a little bit creative about where you're putting different kinds of money and where it came from. So you're making sure that you're following agency guidelines and government guidelines. So we just feel like it's time to make a shift to cost recovery to the schools, knowing that it's still not going to break the bank at any of the schools. So it costs us about, a good round figure would be about $10,000 a year, all in.
And that's for
shirts,
is that
shirts,
for
buses, food.
Is that for grow kids with like boys and girls?
Yeah, that's times 2.
That's
So 20,000 total for both events.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that right now that's supported by sponsorships, donations, and then school funds.
Yeah, so we're getting it from a transfer from schools to pay for their number of students.
Yeah.
We're getting it from social agencies, and we're getting it from the foundations for Red Deer Public and Red Deer Catholic schools.
Gotcha.
And a little bit of private business too, like I said, Service Credit Union. Trefanenko, when he was working with his safety service, he'd sponsor water bottles for the day. There's been quite a few in the past.
It's a web.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it's in
network,
kind.
for sure.
Like my friend who runs Make Your Mark Dance Studio sends her one of her instructors, and they don't charge us for that time. So if we added up the actual cost, including in kind as hard dollars, it would be $30,000-$40,000.
Yeah.
So I can't emphasize enough how important that support in kind is with the facility.
It's crucial.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
It would be really hard to do it otherwise.
Yeah. Well, this covers what I wanted to cover. Is there anything else that is not resonating on the top of your head right now?
Yeah, maybe about the only thing would be like what the follow-up is. So we always try and seek feedback information about sessions and whether they resonated or whether they kind of flopped, and what we could do to adjust so that they're more successful. That's not happened very often.
Yeah.
And we just want to create the best possible experience. So we can't do that if we don't ask people what their experience was like. So we just do that with a Google form. Burmese sent out to each, like we ask for a school rep to be assigned at each school. So whether they come to the day or not, it's probably they will be coming, but I suppose it's not critical that they do. We just need somebody to be able to coordinate that feedback so that we make sure we get it and that it's coming from somebody who experienced it on the day and had something firsthand to say about it.
Gotcha.
And some of the ways that that's informed our practice, like somebody had a criticism one year, many years ago, about, well, there's the Catholic students are coming, but there's no reverence included in the day. And I said, well, nobody asked. Like, if you want that to be part of the day, no different than if we had a group of Muslim kids coming, they needed a room with, to participate in their prayer ritual, we would facilitate that. Like, we can do anything if we know what you want us to do.
Yeah.
It would be I would have a hard time trying to figure out something that we'd be totally prevented from doing. So, provide the feedback and we'll do our best to accommodate. Yeah. And another one was like, for our kids with exceptionalities who come, is there a way to make it super inclusive? And of course, there's lots of ways. So when we were confronted with that feedback reality, it's not personal. We say, okay, well, what can we do to adjust for kids with mobility problems or whatever? So it's important to get that feedback.
For sure. Okay, well, I think that wraps up the time that we have to cover about this. I'm going to take this conversation, and I didn't make as many notes as I thought I was going to, but the framework is...
You don't need notes. It's all up here.
Yeah, but the goal is to take what's here and there and put it out there, right?
Give him my number.
Yeah, there you go. Sean's on speed dial. Let's call that a wrap, and then
I guess, on one more point on that.
okay.
Grow Kids looked different in, Zambia, Africa, than it did in Brooklyn, New York, than it did in Lloydminster, Saskatchewan.
Which is all places it's happening.
Yeah,
right?
in various forms.
Yeah.
So the malleability of this concept, at least our event for sure. I can't speak to the other event as much because I've never been to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are some differences, some subtle, some not so subtle. And it's all very good too, but I can speak to the universal nature of that hope wheel and how we can attach anything to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't have to necessarily have all the elements that we access here to make this happen. It's just, what is our community about and what can we do here that serves our local need? Because you could certainly tailor it to any specific need. Like,
True.
let's say you're talking about deviancy amongst youth. The stats in a community are really bad. There's a lot of, shoplifting and being out late and vandalism. Well, you could easily target those issues by constructing that conference around those local realities. So it's a very malleable concept because respect, understanding, responsibility, hope, health, opportunity, project. That's completely bespokeable. It's customizable. So that's another feature of this concept. It won't look the same in every community because different communities have different needs.
Yeah, I think the only thing that might look the same is the clan format, right? Like the sessions will be entirely different, but the framework of clans of 25, 5 clan leaders leading those, going through 4 different sessions in the day. And that's probably the only commonality.
Yeah, well, but I mean, even at that though, right? Like, that's just what works for us.
Yeah.
We've got large numbers. Yeah. I'm sure that there are other ways to do it.
Yeah, smaller communities and smaller schools.
Yeah, it just really depends on the scan of the local scene and what people feel. Like, what is your raison d'etre? Why are you doing this at all?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you have to start, because if you're not addressing a need, then why are you bothering?
Yeah, and my raison d'etre is I think we can do a better job of supporting kids as they grow up than our culture currently does.
And I would say in response to what you said, the only thing that needs to be the same, to me, that's the only thing that needs to be consistently applied, because that is the broad reaching overall purpose for doing this.
Yeah.
We're supporting the positive, in Grow Kids, formerly Grow Boys, we say supporting the happy, healthy development of young people. So they turn out to be happy, healthy, productive adults.
Bingo.
Simple. So that's the consistent part.
That's the drive behind it, for sure. Okay, well, that's all I got. Thank you very much, Sean, for your time once again. And stay tuned for the rest of the episodes this year. We're going to meet a whole bunch of other people in Red Deer that are all kind of working towards the same objective, which is to try and build the bridges to a better future now by focusing on more resources on early childhood development. Bada bing, bada boom. See you in episode 2.